This is Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Mitch LaFon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Joining me on the phone, it is a guitarist Al Di Meola. A couple of years back, he put out the Beatles Tribute album, for the lack of a better word, and he's got a second one coming up, another tribute to the Beatles coming up in January or February of 2020. We talk about that and all kinds of other stuff. And on the other side of that, we have drummer Chuck Burgi. He, of course, is Billy Joel's drummer, has been there for 14, 15 years, and I just saw them November 15th, 2019 in New York at Madison Square Garden, and let me tell you, what an incredible show, incredible performance. It really, Billy Joel, love him or lump him, and I love him. He just has hit after hit after hit. I mean, the set list, I think, was 25 or 26 or whatever songs. And, I'm not familiar with every single Billy Joel song ever written. And you get there and he starts playing them and you go, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh. And it's just, it's wow. I'm literally speechless. It's wow. And anyway. The show was great, and the great part about it is that he makes it sound like a bar show. The way he interacts, it's so casual. It's so just, hey, everybody, I'm going to play some songs for you, and he tells some stories, and the crowd responds, and it really is like a piano man in a dirty bar, everybody having a whiskey and a smoke kind of thing. And it's phenomenal. Anyway, I caught up with Chuck before the show, which in itself was a moment because here I am at the premier venue for live music, backstage doing an interview. I mean, for musicians, I guess it's to stand on the stage and play Madison Square Garden, which is a big dream. But for rock reporter to do an interview backstage at Madison Square Garden, it's like, oh, well, check that off the list, During the day or before the show, I had a chance to speak with Obi O'Brien, who has worked with Bon Jovi for many, many years. They were in town to listen to mixes of the new Bon Jovi album. So hopefully they were final mixes and the album will be forthcoming, but they were there. And they were listening to what are being submitted, I guess, as final mixes. And so if the whoever, I guess it's the record company or the management or whoever, gives it the green light, then the machine gets into work. It means the band doesn't have to go back into the studio. And it means that we start coming up with a plan of, okay, we need to roll it out this way. We need to get this single put out on this day. We need to get an album cover done for this. And so, we're November 2019. They're in New York listening to final mixes. Assuming that everything was approved and it's good to go, you're probably looking at a March 2020, April 2020 release. Worst comes to worst, maybe because they want to maybe capitalize on sort of summertime sales and festival sales in Europe and what, maybe May 2020, but, listen, unless something implodes, you should be getting a new Bon Jovi album in the first quarter of 2020. Anyway, show is long enough without me going on and on and on. So let us get over to, first, and I will say this, Chuck Burgi during our interview, because Chuck worked with Al, this is why I'm putting them on the same episode. Chuck worked with Al, so you are going to have Al Di Meola first, and then you're going to have Chuck speaking about Al Di Meola. Of course, Chuck does more than speak about Al Di Meola. He talks about Billy Joel and a whole bunch of Tokyo Motor Fist, the new album that he has coming out with Trixter's Steve Brown. And you just cannot get enough Steve Brown in your life. That guy, he's the real deal. Real deal. And that's why when, Dennis D. Young needs a guy, they call Steve. When Def Leppard needs a guy, they call Steve. When Eric Martin needs a guy, they call Steve. Real deal. So, and by the way, the hookup for all of this was Steve to Chuck. So, big shout out, big thank you. Big thank you to Chuck. Big thank you to Steve. And a big thank you to Al Di Meola for the interview. And let's get right over to it. Here is, without further ado, le seul et unique, the one, the only, Al Di Meola. We are speaking with a guitarist, Al Di Meola. Of course, back in 2013, he put out a Beatles tribute album called All Your Life. And coming up in January or February of 2020, there's going to be a new one. As we say in Montreal, bonjour, Al. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm at the record company here in Hamburg, Germany, and just had a very full 6 days of video shoots and camera and photo sessions and interviews and yeah, we're going to give it, hopefully a lot of attention. We're very happy with the end result of this big project. Much bigger than the first one. Much bigger,
yeah. And I've been seeing on your Facebook that you've been filming out by the water and having these great landscapes. It looks fantastic, and of course nothing's been released yet. But okay, so talk to me about this, the second Beatles album. Was it just you did the first one and it was received so well, and you said I'm going to do this one? Was the first one like, I've got some unfinished business, I didn't do this song, and talk to me about the second one and, how you decide which songs are going to go on this. And is this sort of 2 out of 3, 2 out of 4, 2 out of 5, or, okay, we've done 2, it's enough?
I don't know. Now that I've done the second one, of course, I tried to squeeze another 2 or 3 on that I really wanted to do. So there's always that feeling that if I did another one, I'd have to wait kind of a long time, or else people think I'm like Beatle crazy, which I am Beatle crazy. But I have to space them out if I ever did that. And part of the reason was the first one did do very well. It was very well received, very well liked, and sold well. And the other reason was, there was pieces that I wanted to do. And if I did it this time, I didn't want to do it like the first time. First time, I wanted to make it, pretty slimmed down in terms of instrumentation. I just wanted to be pretty much solo acoustic guitar with maybe an acoustic overdub, and that's it. I didn't want to get, although I was tempted, but I didn't want to get seduced into adding other instruments, keyboards, drums, and all that kind of stuff, orchestral instruments and whatnot. I wanted to go to Abbey Road and really not belabor the project, and in essence, it was a cooler idea to do it in that kind of fashion, because it sets it apart from a lot of other 1,000 other Beatle attempts by other people who basically wanted to pretty much copy what the Beatles did. I wanted to do something far different, so I think I achieved a lot of that in that first record. This time I wanted to do a bigger production, but I wanted to combine my style with the Beatles, and stick a little bit closer to the melody as we know it.
Talk to me a little bit about your style and how you compose and how you come up with songs, just because, when you think of, for example, a pop song, you've got a singable guitar riff, you've got a big hook, you've got a chorus, A goes to B, B goes to C, and everybody's happy. How do you sort of come together and put your songs together and decide, okay, these parts go here? What's your process for songwriting?
It's just, it's a longer conversation, longer story, more chapters. I don't want to use the word more depth because really, if you take a song like Norwegian Wood, the melody is just absolutely stunning. All you need to do is hear the melody and the bridge, and you're done. It's a 2-minute song, and everybody is happy, and everyone loves it universally. And then, I could write something that's got, 10 times the content, maybe 50 times the content, and you don't have that immediate kind of recognition that the Beatles will get from something that was just short, concise, and absolutely beautiful. So my idea was realizing there really is nothing more powerful than melodies that go straight to the heart, that also have some kind of history to it, and all I wanted to do was expand on it and play a lot of the way that I play, which involves a lot of syncopation or whatever, but I also wanted to write some parts to it and elongate the composition. And even though I start with it the way we know it, I might finish it with the way we know it too. But where I take it to 2 or 3 or 4 different chapters in the middle, makes it more of an hour record, because then my job is to replace the fact that we have no vocals, no words. So it's more of an obligation to make it more interesting than had I done an instrumental version of the 2-minute piece, the original.
Right, of course. Talk to me then about the Beatles, since that's the conversation. You listen to Paul Stanley or Gene Simmons of Kiss, or you listen to these guys and they say, I saw them on Ed Sullivan and that was the end of it. I had to be a rock star. What was your sort of memory of the Beatles? Was it something that you discovered quietly on the record player in your bedroom, or was it also the Ed Sullivan thing? And what was it about them that just sort of said, yeah, that's for me. I like this.
I think it was first my sister coming home. She's 7 years older than I am, with the Meet the Beatles first record. In America, that was the first one that I knew about. And that's the one with I Want to Hold Your Hand, and saw her standing there and that kind of stuff. And those were big hits on the radio. There was a rage about them. The buzz was not to be believed. And then Ed Sullivan, probably within weeks of me discovering that record that my sister brought home, I think 75% of the population of the whole country tuned in to Ed Sullivan. And that was it. It changed my life. Totally.
It really did.
And not just me, but a whole generation of primarily guitar players and some singers, bass players. It changed our lives. And what can I say? The world wouldn't be the same without them. But they were at a great place at a great time in history. There could not be a similar thing like that today, ever. Because we have too many channels, we have too many choices, we have too many diversions with cell phones and computers, and people are all over the place. Where back then we had far less choices, so we traditionally sat in front of the TV and watched Ed Sullivan show on Sunday. There was only 4 or 5 channels, So this one was a big one because we all knew the Beatles were coming on. And then, when the Stones did their thing, we all watched the Stones too. But the Beatles was we had never heard anything so great, because it truly was great.
It was, and I do agree with you that we've lost our focus. I grew up watching the 80s and watching MTV and Much Music in Canada, and you didn't have a remote. You had to actually stand up and change, so you just left it on. And I got an appreciation for all those heavy metal bands and the Duran Durans and the Madonnas, and you go, well, why do you like all these different styles of music? It's because I was too lazy to change the channel, but now we don't have that focus. You just go everywhere. I want to ask you about this real quick. You worked with Pledge Music, and I'm not going to get into that debacle. I mean, horrible thing happened, but you had the Pledge set up to donate to the American Tinnitus Association. Talk to me about why you chose that charity to donate to, and is it something that is affecting you?
Oh, yeah. I have severe, what they categorize as catastrophic tinnitus. Catastrophic means the level is so loud that it's off the charts, and I have to sleep with a white noise and take medication and all kinds of stuff. And it's 24/7. It doesn't fluctuate ever whatsoever. It's just a super loud screaming in my head that I can't shut off.
How does that affect your playing, but also how does it affect your concentration and your health? I mean, at some point, does it just become, and I don't mean to be intruding, but I mean, does it become psychological where it just drives you nuts to the point of like, argh.
Oh yeah. There's been points where you think you're gonna go crazy and stuff like that, but you do. I talk to people like Pete Townsend about it a lot because he has it too. He thinks Pete's a funny guy. He's actually a great guy, but he he thinks he got it from motorboat, from the wind hitting him when he was in a motorboat. I said, Pete, you had 50 high watt amplifiers behind you, and you had Pete Moon like exploding his drums. No. I'm sure I got it from the boat and the wind. No, look, you get it from your instruments for sure. Drums are really bad. Headphones, click tracks, all those records I made with the click track, go tick, 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 against the eardrums. When I was a kid holding the wood for my father, he was a carpenter, and the power saws, and they had no ear protection. And I used to cringe. Hold a piece of wood. Okay, Dad. And, or the hammering. Just hammering. They're super loud. And eventually, either you will lose your hearing slowly as a result, or there are some people who are susceptible through genetics to also get tinnitus or tinnitus. Both are, by the way, correct way to say it. And you might have 20 musicians, and you might have three or four that have tinnitus, and the rest are just have some loss. So the ones that have tinnitus are genetically predisposed to get this, and it's a brain thing. It's not an ear thing at all.
So, and I'll move on from this, but does it sort of? Do you think to yourself, okay, well, I'm going to have to retire, or do you say, well, this is it? Okay.
No, you just gotta. I hate to say it, not think about it. Like if you focus on it, it can make you crazy. And it's there no matter what you do. But you just get tired of hearing it, so you try not to think about it too much.
Right. Well, and hopefully I haven't forced you to focus on it today. But so let me get off of this topic. Let me go to Return to Forever with Chick Corea. Great band.
There's a guy that's deaf.
Yeah.
He's apparently deaf now. He can't hear. And these are guys that have probably lost 80% of their hearing. I think I've lost maybe 30% of my hearing, and I've got a lot of ringing, which doesn't help. But here's a guy that has no ringing and has probably an 80% loss. And musicians will just, as you go on, that happens. So yeah, that was Return to Forever was a great experience. It was a launching pad for me, of course. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I want to ask about, because you eventually go on and do Land of the Midnight Sun. Where in there did you always know when you were in Return to Forever that I am going to be a solo artist and this is sort of a stepping stone, or did you get some point in there you just went, man, this is not for me. I need to express myself. Talk to me about that time.
I was hoping Return to Forever. After signing a multi-million-dollar deal with CBS, would just continue on and with the contract. But Chick was a very erratic, not very bright thinking businessman who let the laws and religion of Scientology cloud his perspective and his judgment. And as a result, after signing a multi-million-dollar long-term contract that the group signed, we all signed, he handed the contract back after Romantic Warrior because he wanted to break up the band. So he handed this contract back, which was the dumbest thing on the planet Earth. And yeah, I was frightened because I was still, I was 20 or 21. And I said, oh my God, it's all over, But I did have my own solo contract. And I didn't know if I could write. I didn't know what I could do on my own. I had to just do it and see what comes out. And Land of the Midnight Sun was kind of like a testing ground. And then I really knew on the second record, Elegant Gypsy, that I had something, that I can call my own, that I can actually write music. And then it just, I think, we're talking now 30 records, so it definitely has evolved, the writing. And that's, more of what I like to do, and every now and then like to do something like this with the Beatles because it's close to my heart.
Yeah, and it sort of steps outside of what you. Well, in fact, talk to me about the album making process at this point, because you have this long, large catalog. Are you still motivated to come up with new music, or do you sort of see yourself going, hey, you know what? I can go play the Montreal Jazz Fest and just give them my best 10 pieces and move along. What sort of keeps you creative? Is it important to stay creative?
Well, you can stay creative just not making a record, just by going out and improving on the ones that you do live. Or you can pick a project like the Beatles, or like I'd like to sometime do a second Piazzolla follow-up to Diabolic Inventions, because that was really a great project too. To do original material, that's and do all of it, all of the writing. That takes a lot of time. It's a lot of struggle. Harder to do these days because there's more and more gigs than ever before, more and more possibilities in that. There's more family things going on. There's more diversions with the cell phone. So it's a long process and not a lot of motivation because we don't see record stores anymore. They're gone. And streaming is just a form of stealing from musicians. It's a in my opinion, I mean, there are a lot of people who like the streaming system, but to me it's god awful compared to the days of going to a store and picking up a record, and looking at those records and buying them. The whole experience was beautiful.
Listen,
I cannot stand the way it's going now.
I agree with you. There was a whole ritual of getting out of bed and going down to the store and then searching through the bins, and we missed that. But what we also miss is that when you brought it home, whether it was a vinyl or a CD, there was a full spectrum of sound. Now you've got everything compressed. And when you're listening to an Al Di Meola record and the stuff's compressed, you're like, really, Al, an MP3? No. That does, you need to.
And by the way, I've gotten used to the MP3s. Because I got everything on my phone and I'm traveling all the time. So the convenience factor may be there, but I'm totally used to the sound on a phone. I forgot what a record sounds like. I totally forgot.
Yeah, you see,
although I got to tell you, the vinyls are selling very well at our shows.
I bet
people buying vinyls more now than ever before. Not ever before, but I mean in the last few years.
Now I know
I much prefer the years ago. The way it was. I don't like this new system. It's terrible.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. Now I know we've only got 20 minutes, so I'm just going to rush along to these last two questions. In 2000,
I got to run to the airport. That's why.
Yeah, I know. So let me just finish this. In 2015, you were honored at the Montreal Jazz Festival with the Miles Davis Award. That is to honor the international jazz musicians for their entire body of work. Talk to me about that, because there's a few jazz festivals in the world, but Montreal is sort of up in the top 10 of the biggest and the best. What was that
top
like
5.
to get top 5, right? I mean, it's a great festival, and it's literally down the street from me. But what was that like to get that award? Because now you've got this festival and the musicians behind it and the organ saying, hey, Al, you're not just some dude. You are this guy, and we just bestow this award on you.
It's amazing. I mean, it would have to come from a foreign country. How do you like that?
Well, not foreign to me.
It's not foreign. I mean, not foreign like Europe, but I mean, it's a different country. Let's say it would have to come from a different country, even though we're related, we're cousins. But Montreal's audience was amongst the best in the world for liking and appreciating what I've done. Because every time I played there, I always felt an extra surge of appreciation than even the Americans. So. There's something about Montreal. I've experienced it over and over, and then getting honored with this award was really beautiful. It was well appreciated, and I recently got one Well, when we did the Return to Forever reunion, I got a BBC Lifetime Achievement Award from George Martin, and that blew my mind. Right,
that's
as
big.
Well.
That's big. And
big.
I know you got to get to the airport, so I'll finish with this. Back to Land of Midnight Sun, you had bass player Jaco Pastorius play on it. Just a quick story about Jaco. We know that in Metallica's bass player did a whole documentary about it, and he's just one of these guys, right? What was he like to be around and to work with, and just as a talent?
Well, Jaco was, he definitely was the most revolutionary bassist ever. I mean, no one had heard anything like that before. It's not to slight Stanley, because Stanley took the bass into another realm as well. But we had heard slapping and all that kind of stuff before with Sly and the Family Stone, but we had never heard someone play it so beautifully, like an upright bass on a Fender fretless, and with all his harmonics and beauty and intelligence that he played with, and feel was killer. So I knew of Jaco when I was in high school. I used to go down to Florida, and people were talking about this guy Jaco and everything. So I was kind of a guy that maybe could be considered discovering him, because I recommended him to Bobby Colomby in Blood, Sweat, and Tears, who was looking for a bass player. And so he wound up playing with Blood, Sweat, and Tears on my recommendation. And then Joe Zawinul spotted him in Blood, Sweat, and Tears and hired him. But before he did any recording with anybody, his very first time in a studio was Land of Midnight Sun. That was the first time he's ever recorded in any studio.
Wow, that's a great story. And I know you got to get to the airport. New album, Beatles Classics, is coming out January, February of 2020.
Yeah, we will have a title soon. We were working on a title.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
If you have any ideas, let us know.
Let me think. Yesterday, today, I don't know.
Anyway. We were thinking 60 years ago today, or 60 years today.
Yeah, something like that.
But I don't love it. And somebody said, this music went straight to my heart. I said, well, what about Straight to the Heart?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a good Bryan Adams song.
It's Straight to the Heart is a Bryan Adams, so that cancels that idea.
See?
You know what I mean?
See? But absolute pleasure, and I could do another 45 minutes easily, but as we say in Montreal,
I know.
Merci beaucoup.
I know.
Thank
Well,
you
we
so
can
much.
continue if you like. I'm going to play the festival this summer.
Oh, well then great. Let us do something in person.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah, get my info from the
We're
company.
working on it. I think we have an offer, so I'll be up there. But let me run now, and I'll talk to you soon.
Merci. Cheers. Bye-bye now.
All the best.
Now back to Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon.
A very big thank you to guitarist Al Di Meola. As you heard, he will be at the Montreal Jazz Festival in 2020. Very much looking forward to his performance in this upcoming summer's festival. But let us get right over to drummer Chuck Burgi, recorded backstage at Madison Square Garden. God, that sounds good to say that. Here is Chuck Burgi. We are at Madison Square Garden with Billy Joel drummer Chuck Burgi. Chuck, first of all, thank you for having us out.
Oh, my pleasure, Mitch. Hello, everybody out there in podcast land.
Yeah. Now, we've done an interview before, and we've talked about all kinds of stuff, but I'm going to start off just real quick. Recently, I interviewed Al Di Meola, and you had a chance to work with him.
Sure did.
Talk to me about some of the work you've done with him and just him as a player.
Oh, okay. So it goes way back, because I joined him for his first ever solo tour. I think it was for the album Elegant Gypsy. And we were out for 6-8 months, I forget. It was a long tour, and I had the most amazing time playing with him, because he was one of my heroes. He was technically superior at that point. The songs that we were playing were coming from his first record, and for the most part, we did opening slots for the Weather Report tour. So we opened up for what I think is the classic Weather Report lineup with Jaco, and they were promoting Heavy Weather. So it was that is like several volumes to actually talk about that experience. But working with Al was a thrill, and that was really my first official tour with any artist. And he was a little rough around the edges in terms of, I think he was a little paranoid when I worked with him. I don't know who he is now and what he's like, but he was demanding, which was no problem. He was intimidating because he had just come out of working with some of the most amazing fusion drummers, Chick Corea's Return to Forever. So it was a wake-up call. It was an opportunity to do my best. And I loved working with him. We got along great. We would hang out a lot. We had a bunch of Spanish guys in the band, so neither of us spoke habla español good. So I hung out with Al a good deal and really enjoyed him as a guy. And as a mentor, I was a little overwhelmed because, I've never been really a trained player. I studied privately for a very brief period of time. But someone on his level and with the people he's worked with, it was intimidating. So, but it gave me the opportunity to see a lot of the planet, to meet a lot of people. A lot of great stuff in my life has come out of that tour, and it kept me in fusion music, I guess is the best way to refer to it, for a couple more years, and prepared me for a gig which came the year later with a band called Brand X, and that was taking Phil Collins' place and doing an album and a tour with them. So that was like the tail end of fusion as I think I know it, and everybody looking back would know it. So Al was extraordinary and an amazing guy to work with, and an incredible talent on guitar to try and rise to the challenge to play with.
So we are at Madison Square Garden for Billy Joel. Talk to me about this experience, because it's very unique. It's not just a show on a tour and we move on. It is show number, I believe, 70 tonight, right?
It's Billy's. It's this tour, this residency's 70th, but it's my 82nd tonight.
Wow.
Because we did 12 Gardens live when I first joined him in 2006, and he hit his 100th lifetime last August. So I don't know. It's like he's into 112 now, 13, 14, something stupid. So this is out of control. We're the most successful MSG franchise because we, never lose, and every show is a sellout. But it's unprecedented. If you had told me 10 years ago you're going to be playing, your 82nd show after 6 years of not only doing this residency, but going on 14 with Billy, it's just, this whole thing has been, it's really hard to talk about because this is beyond most people's comprehension. Most guys anywhere in the world would be happy to play the Garden once. Have it be sold out, that would be an even bigger plus. But to be able to do it over and over again with the guy that I think is like the king of New York. That's how I think of Billy. So it's an unprecedented experience. And it's a Friday night, so tonight's going to be completely nuts. And we're doing a lot of hits because that's just what Billy's thinking about doing right now. And people have been loving it. So this has been beyond my comprehension. I'm at a loss for words. You'll get a feel. You've been here before. This is your first show here? Yeah. So, this is the best venue in the world. It's, to me, the best sounding venue. And it feels the most intense to be on stage with this guy especially, because he is Mr. New York. So, yeah.
It really is an extravaganza. Now, have you started talking about this ending at some point, or is this will just keep going? We
started talking about next year. Wow. I think we're going into 2020 with guns blazing. I know that the man who books us also books Metallica, the incomparable Dennis Arfa, and he's starting to drag Billy. Now that we've done baseball stadiums for the last 6 years, we're going to start our first football series of stadiums. In April, we play Panthers Stadium in North Carolina. And I think there are other stadiums, football stadiums, in the future of this coming year.
Now, one of the reasons we know each other is through Steve Brown, who, of course, Played in Trixter.
Yeah.
We love our Trixter. You do Tokyo Motor Fist with him.
I do.
We did the first one.
Yeah.
Great melodic rock.
Oh my God, the new album's going to be even better.
So let's get to that. Let's get to album number 2.
Album number 2, I think Steve outdid himself. Some of the songs on this album are my favorite rock and roll songs ever. I mean, just extraordinary. So what's changed for me is I'm actually recording my drums at home.
Wow.
It's been a huge learning curve, but I've been my own editor, engineer, producer, and I send him the tracks once I'm done, and I've done all I can, and I've been sending it to him, and he calls me up and goes like, dude, they're done. I'm like, thank you. So it's so exciting, and I can't wait for it to come out. I think Bruno Ravel from Danger is going to be doing some mixing for us, if not the whole record.
Ted sings on it.
Ted sings on it, and what's really creepy is Steve gives me the albums, and they're done, in my opinion. Right. He's programmed all the drums. A lot of what I play, I take off of what he's programmed. What time is it? I guess got to stay on top of that.
7:45.
Okay, good. So, sorry about that, folks.
No worries.
In any case, Steve programs these great drum parts, and this new album's got some of the slickest, coolest stuff I've ever played. So I've borrowed a lot from what he wrote. And then I think some of the new stuff is the best I've ever heard from him. Certainly going to top the first Tokyo Motor Fist album and be an awesome addition to the very hard kind of medium tempo rockers that were pretty much a staple of that first album. There's a lot more funky stuff and a couple of, I guess, more atmospheric, maybe Pink Floyd type moments. It's really awesome.
I can't wait. And I know you do have to go, so I'll ask you one more question before you run out. But earlier today we were talking with Obi O'Brien, Bon Jovi's Obi O'Brien. They are in town currently right now listening to the new mixes or the final mixes of the new Bon Jovi album. You, of course, worked on that first Bon Jovi album.
On the first album.
So, and we're in New York, so give me some Bon Jovi juice. Talk to me a little bit about your experience.
My experience with Bon Jovi was, I worked in a band with Bobby Kulick. In a band called Balance. And so we were being produced I was doing their second record, and we were being produced by Tony, his cousin. And Tony was one of the co-owners of the Power Station, the great Power Station, which has been bought by Berklee College of Music and is going to be reopened for, So in any case, it was through playing at the Power Station and playing with Balance that I met the guy who produced a lot of the first album for John, Lance Quinn. And Lance used me on a project called Archangel. Don't know whatever happened to it. I did a couple of songs, but I got a call out of the blue from him saying, listen, I need you to come in and do some songs on this Bon Jovi record. I don't even know if the band was called that at that point, but it was like, so who's in it? It was like, well, Johnny. I was like, the janitor?
But you played on Runaway, right?
No, Runaway was Joe LaRocca, who I think has passed on into wherever all good rockers are going to go. And I hope it's a great place where there's like lots of good equipment and and everybody. So I think Joe has passed on, but he recorded on that. I did 5 songs on that record. I'd be hard pressed to remember what the names of them are unless I sat with the CD and listened to them, and I could go, that's one of them, that's another one. But I think for the first 15 years I was given credit as being a bass player. I know. And then I think, I know me and a couple of the guys from Balance were given like additional musician credit. So that's all. Johnny was great. I knew him because he was the cleanup guy at the end of the night of sessions. So I'd be doing sessions up there, and we'd hang out, and I just used to marvel at his looks, and just go like, dude, if you're going to do a band, you got to do it now. And so he would smile that pearly white, amazing $100 million smile, and then eventually, and then he was a god. And then,
janitor you've ever seen.
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, I'll throw sexuality to the wind. I thought he was gorgeous.
But here's a funny thing: you've played Madison Square Garden more than him.
Well, I'm going to have to send him a card with my deepest apologies. But I didn't know that. I thought for sure they would have,
They have not been here 82 times.
Oh, my God. Well, this is unprecedented. And, one thing about working with Johnny and a bunch of these other bands I've been lucky to be with, there were so many good songs in those groups that it's one of the things I remembered about I don't remember what they were, but I remember there were great songs. There were great crafted, pieces of rock and roll. And so I'm here tonight with a guy who I think newer generations are realizing that his older stuff was crafted so beautifully and so uniquely that we're just trying to bring it to life every night. None of it was broken. I try and pay as big an homage to Liberty DeVito as possible because, so much of his work is just it's standing the test of time, and all I'm trying to do is pay homage to that, and be consistent for Billy. So
now I know you got to run, so I'm going to say thank you, and let's go watch this show. Thank you, buddy.
All right, people out in podcast land, it's great to meet you and see you again. Yes. Rock on. Thank you, Mitch. Look at.
You're listening to Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Rock Talk.